What is up, Pitt fans? Thank you so much for tuning in to Inside the Panthers on YouTube. My name is Stephen Thompson, coming at you with another Inside Pitt post-game report. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving, and I hope you enjoyed watching the Panthers dominate Oregon State in the third place of the NIT season in the third place game, of the NIT season tip-off at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. The Panthers won 76-51. They just kind of strangled the Beavers and bounced back in a big way from that Florida loss. I mean, coming out of that game, we talked about it. I thought they just didn't look ready. They just weren't prepared for the level of physicality, for the intensity that a Power 5 opponent brings. And, wipe off the resume, wipe off what Oregon State looks like on paper. I mean, that's still a Power 5 team with some size, some speed, some agility, some toughness, some veterans that, you know, in the Florida game, Pitt just didn't look ready to handle. They didn't meet the moment against the Gators, who really just kind of overpowered them. And Pitt returned the favor this time against Oregon State. I mean, in both games, Pitt raced out to a quick lead, but in the Florida game, they come out 7-0 to start the game. They're only up 5 at halftime, and then they just completely run out of gas in the second half. And like I said, Oregon State, maybe not the best team in the world, certainly not on Florida's level, but they certainly weren't on Pitt's level either. Pitt went out to a 7-2 lead, they upped it to 12 by halftime and then just kept their foot on the gas. And like I said, strangled Oregon State in the second half and won by 25. And I think the first thing that you have to point out is just the effort overall, the intensity, the force that they played with consistently for 40 minutes was so much better this time against Oregon State than it was against Florida. Pitt played about, I'd call it 15 minutes of really good, focused basketball, especially on the defensive end, especially rebounding, and especially when kind of handling the ball, I guess, just in general, not necessarily totally offensively, but just being strong with the ball, preventing turnovers. Like, they were good at that for about 15 minutes against of game time against Florida. They were good for a full 40 minutes against the Beavers. I can read off a few stats for you. I mean, that kind of illustrates what I think that kind of reflects, I think, the better focus that they had, the way they came in more prepared, and the way that they addressed those issues from that Florida game. I mean, on the offensive end, they moved the ball really effectively. 15 assists on 24 made baskets. That's a fantastic assist rate. They made 20 of 24 free throw attempts. That's 83% after shooting just 63% from the charity stripe. That's 308th best in Division I through 5 games entering today. And just the hustle stats in general fell almost completely on the Panthers' side of things in this game. They won the turnover battle 14-11. They won points off of turnovers 18-11. They out rebounded Oregon by 13. They won offensive rebounding 17-8. And this is my favorite one. They won second chance points by 26-7, a 19-point margin on second chance points. That was my favorite one. That's a truly incredible stat. And I mean, they were diving after loose balls, but they even created second opportunities off of their own makes by stealing a few inbounds passes to get fouled, and then just land the ball in as well. I mean, it was a top to bottom effort from them, and I think we can talk about their start, and they came out really fast, but they did that against Florida, and the difference was today that they kept their foot on the gas and really suffocated this team. Like I said, they didn't allow an inch. They didn't allow Oregon State to think that they really ever, had a chance in this game. And that's what good teams do against bad teams. And I think that was what the case was here. Kind of leading this charge, I felt like tonight, was Zach Austin, in kind of that category of hustle and good effort defining the day for the Panthers. I mean, he got off to a hot start, hit 2 of his first 3 shots from 3. That was really good and really encouraging for him after he had really struggled through these first few games of the year, but ended up with 19 points, 8 rebounds, 2 steals, an assist in 27 minutes. It was by far his best game as a Panther, season high in points, and he's put together a really nice week here in Brooklyn. I think averaging 14.5 points per game, 8.5 rebounds per game. He's shooting, I believe, above 50% from the field in these 2 games, scored in double figures. Huge week for Zach Austin and desperately needed because, Blake Hinson and Bub Carrington were a little off, and they have been a little off these couple games. I mean, Carrington especially just 5 points on 1 of 5 shooting, did have 6 rebounds and 5 assists, but also committed 4 fouls and 2 turnovers. So it was a little bit of a rough night for Carrington, and Hinson started slow before coming on strong and scoring 17 points in the end. I think the vast majority of those, 11 of them came in the second half. But uh, when your stars are not all the way there, when they are not performing uh, in the way that you expect them to, you need that fourth guy. You need that other guy. You need a guy who can step up and be consistent and to give you a little bit of a boost offensively. And Pitt had been kind of missing. They didn't really need that through those first 4-ish games of the year, but they definitely needed it against Florida and didn't get it. Uh, Even though Austin, I thought, played pretty well. But they really needed it in this game, and they got it. And you can see what the difference is, when they get Austin going, when he is a threat from the outside, like he's been for most of his career, versus when he's not. It's the difference between a blowout win and a blowout loss. It's just keeping your head above water offensively, even when the shots aren't falling. That goes back to the effort and the hustle thing. Is if you are struggling to shoot the basketball, the way you can keep yourself in a game is with hustle, with by doing all of the other little things when the shots aren't falling. And Austin was a great example of that, just kind of keeping his head down, doing what he had been doing through the first few games. When his shot wasn't falling, he was making huge contributions on the defensive end. He was rebounding really well. And then tonight the shots finally start to fall, and he becomes kind of that fourth option outside of Carrington, Leggett, and Hinson that can cover when one of those guys is having an off night, like the way Carrington did. Speaking of that big three, I mean, we talked about, Hinson kind of coming alive in the second half. And, after a rough start, he shot only 2 of 9 from the field in the first half, but then 4 of 8 in the second half. He started 0 of 7 from 3 and then made 3 of his final 4 shots from distance. So he had a decent game, but started slow. Someone who was consistent throughout the entire game was Ish Leggett, and who has been consistent and versatile throughout this entire season has been Ish Leggett. I don't think you can give him enough love. I don't think you can understate how valuable he's been to this team through 6 games. I don't know how much I really expected from him. I knew he'd be a great, valuable piece as a veteran ball handler next to these 2 freshman guards that Pitt has, but I don't think I really appreciated how valuable his consistent ability to get his own shot, his toughness on the defensive end, his ability to rebound, and then also, I mean, his passing ability that really has come to life as he gets surrounded by shooters and some more offensive talent. It's been really remarkable how consistent he's been and how valuable he's been on both ends for the Panthers. I mean, tonight, 15 points, 6 of 12 from the field, efficient shooting, 2 of 2 from the line, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, only 1 turnover, a block, and a steal in 32 minutes. I mean, he has been everything that the Panthers could have hoped for and more out of that kind of veteran guard that they added in the offseason. And I'm going to continue singing his praises because he's continued to earn it after every game. I'm big-ish Leggett fan. He's been arguably the Panthers' most valuable player. I mean, Carrington and Hinson get a lot of the headlines, but even when we do talk about Leggett, I feel like we're still kind of underappreciating what he's been able to do. Um, you know, Speaking of Carrington, he had a rough game today. Like I mentioned, the 4 fouls, 2 turnovers, just 1 of 5 from the field, 0 of 3 from 3-point range. Did make all of his free throws, but I just thought, especially early on, he showed a better command of the offense and a better ability to play through some contact. Um, the stats really won't show it, I guess. I mean, like I read them off, they don't look great, but I just felt like as far as the eye test goes, he was better, Like Florida really beat him up and Oregon State tried to do the same thing, but I thought you could see marks of progress. I thought you could see him kind of read those hard hedges and that tight defense from point guards a little bit better. So, I he looked really good against competition that he was decidedly better than. But I think I appreciated the way Carrington took a step forward today. Clearly watched the film, clearly learned from his mistakes where he got kind of rushed and overwhelmed against Florida, and put those lessons to practice against Oregon State. And again, the box score won't reflect that, but I really believe that he looked much more calmer. He was harder to rush, and he was harder to take off balance, or to put off balance in this game uh against Oregon State. And meanwhile, Jalen Lowe got a bunch of burn in his place, and I think took good advantage of those minutes. And I thought he played pretty well, even though he did not shoot the ball very well either. Also, just 1 of 5 from the field, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and 3 turnovers. But I thought even he really benefited from just being out there on the floor and getting a little bit more burn against an opponent that's, I'll keep going back to, I don't think Oregon State is that good, but they are a Power 5 team that presents a different physical and skilled and talent challenge that, a Florida Gulf Coast and a Jacksonville and a Binghamton and a North Carolina T just can't give you. So I think you've seen steady progress from both of those guys. Obviously, they started at different places and had different things to address, but I just think that their box score doesn't tell the full story of how how far they've come. Even just in this 1 week, kind of learning to deal with the pressures of college basketball and how to handle when teams try to target you and take advantage of the fact that you're young. On the flip side of things, I thought this was a pretty rough trip to Brooklyn for the Twins. Just that size that they added just hasn't played, I think, in the way that many had hoped. They just haven't really been factors. They weren't factors against Florida. Didn't play much, either of them, Jorge or Guillermo, against Oregon State. And just like I said, that weight's not really playing right now the way that I think you'd imagined it would offensively. I think they're a little bit better defensively. I think they're a little bit better on the boards. But man, just offensively, I think they are hunting things more than they need to. They feel like they have to make certain moves and show off certain things to really demonstrate that they've improved, and that's led to, at least from my view, some predetermined offensive moves that lead to rush shots and turnovers and bad decisions just in general. They they just were not very very good, and thought they were loose with the ball. They were only credited for 3 turnovers, but just looked generally rushed, and like they didn't have a super cohesive plan when they wanted to attack the basket, and like they weren't really reading defenses in front of them, but kind of had a move in mind that they wanted to make, and just rolled with it. So a little bit of a step back for those two, after what I thought was some promising start to the year, but obviously against teams that they could pretty easily overwhelm with their size and their length already, even before they both put on 20 pounds of weight, or give or take, in the offseason. So those guys got some learning to do, and they'll get more opportunities to do that coming forward. I mean, the Panthers still have 3 more games in a row against Power 5 opponents coming up on this schedule in the next 2 weeks. So those guys are going to have to continue to get better, to learn how to use that added weight and not just kind of have it. You don't play the same way before and after you gain 25 pounds or 20 pounds, however much they did gain. So I think there's a bit of a learning curve with them. And I think they're slowly just trying to figure things out, and they'll have more opportunities to do that moving forward. So, you know, a good win for the Panthers here in Brooklyn to close out their trip to the Big Apple. They leave at 5-1. Obviously, a much better result than what they got last year during their trip to Brooklyn, when they still were able to take some positives from it. So I think all in all, just a pretty successful trip, even though the Florida loss still kind of stings. I think they learned a little bit about themselves. They demonstrated some mental and physical toughness, and they can leave Brooklyn with their heads held high, and still give themselves some things to work on moving forward, and then have some more to prove in these coming games, over these coming 2 weeks against some really good competition, and the start of ACC play coming up in about a week against Clemson. So With that, I'm headed out of here. I thank you all for tuning in to another Inside Pitt post-game report. We'll have another video this weekend tomorrow after the Panthers take on Duke. We'll recap that, maybe talk about it live. We'll see. But for now, leave you with a Pitt win, the first of the week, and I hope that you all have a good rest of your holiday weekend. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to us on YouTube. That's youtube.com/@InsideThePanthers. And you can find all of our reporting about Pitt, practices and games at InsideThePanthers.com. Appreciate you all tuning in. Like I said, enjoy the remainder of your holiday weekend, and I'll talk